ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I am happy to be here tonight with part 2 of the Joys of Poetic Meter. Part 1 was done as a video, and part 2 as well, but the power failed. Therefore, we are going to have a solo show today. And, okay, so I'm going to feature Bliss in Triple Rhythm. That's the book I have here. It's subtitled A Toolbox for Poets. And you may even be able to see the toolbox, I think, quite possibly. Well, I have other books, too, that I have, in which I have published the kind of verse that I'd like to demonstrate for you today. Last time, we looked at trochees, Mary, and iambs. Hello. Hello, Mary. Iamb followed by trochee. And we've got just a hint of the fact that there might be some possibilities for 3-beat rhythm structure units, as when we looked at a poem by Catullus, the ancient Roman poet Catullus, who liked the line 1 and 2 and a 3 and 4 and 5 and. You remember his poem, he was a party-goer. He had nothing but cobwebs left in his wallet from previous excessive expenditures. So he invited his friend to come to a dinner party, except the friend would have to just simply provide the food, the drink, the entertainment, and also invite the women. Well, we're done with that, but we're done with the two-syllable structures. But that hint at a 3-syllable structure is the preface for what I will do today. I would like to do 2 things to show you the great variety of both 3-syllable structure units and their applications, and also the way they can be combined with 2s for extraordinary magic. And this was done by the ancient Greeks, and I do it indeed in the style that they taught me. I'm big on acquiring mentors and copying them and learning from them. So let's just start with the 3-syllable unit called the amphibrach, which is la la la. I'm not going to teach difficult things. I like simple ideas. This one can be grasped easily by a 4-year-old. Amphibrach is la la la. And 1 and 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. That's the rhythm. It's actually a rhythm that I picked up from a poem by Pushkin called The Cloud. I like to read Russian poetry because often, and also German poetry because they use meters that we don't find too often in English. Snowed in by the drift of the outer environs, my spirit I lift with a vigor like Byron's, who, pacing the shoreline, the wrinkles marine, called free of all aging in glory pristine. The river of time in your mind that is flowing, compliant will feel that your spirit bestowing the tempo, direction, and speed of the piece can grant from dull slowing a freedom release. I'll cover more space and more time in a minute, should life to a triumph pay tribute within it, and generate luck where no lack will be known, if glory outpoured to the heaven be shown. Philosophy, helmsman, you aid in preparing the ventures that poetry soon will be daring, when thought of the snow long ago is forgot by sailor who bravely an odyssey wrought. I'd like to say 2 things about that. First, I forgot to read the title. Can you guess what the title might be? It's called Weather Retort. In Binghamton, we have very strange weather. Binghamton, upstate New York, where I live, very strange weather. I call it weather theater. I enjoy the drama of it. But I also teach myself, when it gets very gray for a while, to ignore what's outside. And this is how I do it. I recall Byron. He looked at the wrinkled sea and said, there's no age in those wrinkles. Ever-preserved youth is what he found there. And then you'll find something else that's interesting. I had lots of rhymes, internal rhymes, end rhymes. The Romans who perfected this, it's a Greek form originally, the Romans took over all the Greek forms. Their greatest lyric poet, Horace, was a Hellenophile, and he made sure to use all the forms. So this helps me a lot, because all you have to do is look up the rhythm charts for the Horace versions of these things, and you find yourself practicing the very close English equivalent of what was done in ancient Greek. All right, weather retort. That's the very first poem in the book. And let me do the one on the facing page, too. It's called Hail, Holy Light. Is time in control, or am I? There's a question. Let deity picturing lend a suggestion. See light of the morning Apollo appear. He's mastered the craft of the charioteer. You're also a rainer, a trainer, a rider, of sun-flaring steeds, the director, provider, the bliss of the bridegroom you know, and the force you feel in the spirit is leading each horse. How quick is the minute of living? Determine. By verve are you spurred in the word of your sermon. Your anthem is graphing your transit in time, deep breathing in vigor with canorous rhyme. Don't muggle your travel on Saturn, old Cronus. Divest yourself well of dead memory onus. Hail future in aureate Helios spree, and carry to Phoebus a greeting from me. You can tell what fun these things are. That's, I think, a pretty good demonstration of the amphibracht. It's super clear. Now let's try the Anapest. The Anapest is another 3-syllable meter, and that is equally simple to grasp. La la la. They're more popular than you might think, because although modern poets don't seem to be using any of these meters with any great regularity, there's one form in which it quite clearly survives, and that's the limerick. You can write amphibrachtic lyrics too, but I happen, for purposes of demonstration, to have chosen the Anapestic variety. So here are a few limericks in Anapestic. When the time came to leave Queen Calypso, sad Ulysses would not leave her lips, so he at length made it clear it was only the fear of Penelope's wrath moved the ships so. Things never were better with Circe. Turning men into animals? Mercy! It was misery for the new bull, bear, and boar, but I've made it a well-metered verse, see? Now the way that Ulysses went after the Cyclopean eye would bring laughter to the arrogant few, but with little ado he'd have hanged the young punk from the rafter. Then Ulysses came home. It is hard. What I need is a narrative bard, and he's got to bring with him a good sense of rhythm, or likely be feathered and tarred. Dear Ulysses, I'll be at your service. Not a thing on the planet can swerve us. I am handy and gallant, and banding our talent, we know that no foe can unnerve us. What you want is a musical master. You have found one. I'll work all the faster, but while feeling the need for a suitable speed, I'll write featly, no fear of disaster. I'm a minstrel, a merry métier, and I really rev up when I play. On my limerick lyre, plink the lyrical wire, and with daring desire have my way. You see what I have given this little presentation, and as well as the first one, the title Joys of Poetic Meter. That's my goal, really, just to show how much fun they are. If I can do that, I have done everything I wanted. Now, for the next one, we have Hippo. I actually brought back a porcelain hippo as a souvenir treat from Egypt, which was done in special Egyptian blue, and it had lotus tattoos all over it. Now, the hippo, which manages to look pregnant even when it's not, is a symbol of fertility, and the lotus flower in its various stages of prolific blooming is a symbol of fertility. So the lesson of the hippo is clear. I wish I could find it today. It didn't turn up. we're ready to go with it. An Egyptian clay hippo I lovingly view, with her multiple lotus tattoo. Every stage in the growth of the plant may be seen for a hippo-like symbol serene. It is glazed in the vivid and sumptuous hue of a sky rich in brightness of blue. Who the riddle of hippo and lotus can know may enriched by fertility grow. Stems a wave in the wind and new budded in spring, him the blessing that pregnancies bring. And it happened that on the computer today blissful hippos were floating my way. To the emblems attend, let fecundity come. By the Nile, hear a thunderbolt drum. Be the eye of Osiris amenable to productivity season for you. Interestingly, in mythological terms, the Egyptians regarded the Nile as a god, not a goddess, and sometimes he was roughly equated with Osiris, the god that dies every year, because the Nile dries up every year, and then comes back to life when Osiris, dear sister Isis, sheds a tear. I love that part. Now, before we leave the Anapest, it is so much fun writing in Anapest, so I'm not eager to leave. I'll try one more, and I call it Torch and Bucket. This is about one of the most amazing religious teachers, I think, in the history of world religion. Her name was Rabia, and she died in the year 801 of our era. She was in the early period of Islam, and she was an extraordinary imaginer and I would say public relations genius. What she did was walk down the street of her hometown, Basra, carrying two things. In one hand, a flaming torch. In the other, a bucket full of water. Naturally, she would be asking, not asking herself, but waiting for other people to ask, what do you think you're doing? And then the reply would be, I intend to drown hell and burn down heaven, because they are both dangerous and gigantic distractions from God. I take a minute for a deep breath and some deep thought. Now we proceed to the poem. When with water-filled pail and a torch burning bright, Lady Rabia walked, she'd incite many questioners. Pray, would you kindly explain what's the goal that you hope to attain? When I prayed to be spared from the flaming of hell, fires had seared me. I feel how they fell. When I asked to gain heaven through sanctified grace, I could see the door slam in my face. As I love my Lord God for his nature alone, I no other reward want to own. Since I love my Lord God for his nature held dear, there's no hell that I ever can fear. With my bucket I plan all the hellfire to drench, and its very idea to quench. And I want with my torch to set heaven ablaze, in the hope not a trace of it stays. Rabia. Now, for the next form, I would like to turn to a book that contains a lot of adventures I've had with this form. It's the first of the forms I want to demonstrate that combines threes and twos. This is called the let's see. It is called the Third Asclepiatic, and I think I'll read you one here. Let's explain the Third Asclepiatic. 1 and 2 and a 3, 4 and a 5 and 6. 1 and 2 and a 3, 4 and a 5 and 6. 1 and 2 and a 3 and 1 and 2 and a 3 and 4. It's not so obvious that that would be a fun rhythm. But a lot of things aren't obvious. But then they seem so totally natural once they've been discovered. Listen to this. Once again, I do my favorite what treatment of ancient rhythms. I hybridize them. I don't do that all the time, but very often because I like rhymes. Rhymes are a modern discovery. The Greeks and the Romans didn't have regularly rhymed poems. You don't find a single one, and if you ever hear a Latin poem, for example, Dies Irae, which is crammed with rhymes, you know it is not ancient Roman, but medieval Christian. Here, then, is my third Asclepiatic. Praise the gift of the hymn, found ere the seeker try. Lord, the visitant vim, granted to lifted hands, making stronger the weaker, raising songful the soul from bands. Thank the chill for the brisk wind that we glad inhale. Green, let's speak of the life, dewy, renewed in eye. We're the oil lamp Aladdin, rug on runway to climb the sky. Mars departed with March, comes Aphrodite near, Rhododactyl the hand, Henad the heaven rose, passion grandeur the mighty, waft unslaken the chanter chose. When March, which is the name for the god of Mars, goes away, what succeeds it, what follows it, is April. That is based on a form, you'd never guess it, of the name of the goddess Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty. So war gives way to beauty. And I say her hand was rhododactyl. That just means rosy-fingered. And that's Homer's favorite way in Greek of describing how this hand looks. That is, the hand raised by the dawn. Now I'll go back to I was so eager, I almost skipped this poem, but I think it's a nice, energetic introduction. This is an adventure that I had. This is a bilingual book. It's called Einige antes Vergnügen, a treat not known before. And my friend, Philip Restetsky, is also on the cover right there with me. And we have a subtitle, Deutsch-Amerikanische Poetische Dialoge in alten Rhythmen, or German-American Poetic Dialogues in Ancient Rhythms. I want to tell you what happened. My German teacher sent me a copy. She's a good friend of mine. She's 95 and still going strong. She sent me a copy of a journal of young German poets, their works, just in case I wanted to see what's going on over there. I was most interested to see. But I wasn't most interested in most of the poems. I couldn't get up any enthusiasm for them at all until all of a sudden something struck me as utterly astounding. And that was, one of the poems was written in the perfect ancient Greco-Roman Third Asclepiatic form, and it was perfect in vigor and nuance of expression as well as in form. And I said to my German teacher, how did this happen? What's going on here? There's nothing like it here or anywhere else that I've ever seen. And she said, well, I have no idea, but I can put you in touch with the author if you want. So she did that. And I wrote him a letter in which I translated his ode and then wrote my own reply. Can you guess what he did? He translated my ode and he wrote in German a reply. And I translated his ode and wrote in English a reply. And this went on for a couple of years. And so we did a whole book of them and we published them. The only rule was if your collocutor writes in a certain form, you should try to write in it also, and then your collocutor will do the same, and that'll go on for a while. But whenever either of you feels like switching to an ancient Greco-Roman pattern of a different kind, go ahead and switch. As long as it's ancient Greco-Roman and adhered to with strict requirements of craft, as the ancients did. Now I will read you a poem that I wrote. It's called Joy of Song. You may be rather surprised at all the happiness in my poems, but I am not a gloomy poet. I'm not bipolar, although according to Kay Redfield Jamieson, in her book Touched by Fire, poets are disproportionately prone to be bipolar, to have bipolar syndrome, but I don't happen to have it, so I still claim to be a poet because I feel so astonishingly good whenever I write poetry. Here is the Third Asclepiatic. Oh, I guess, did I show you how that goes? Yes, I just did. Let's go. Third Asclepiad bliss. Who would have thought to find meter comely as this? Rarely it comes to mind. Now our prosified hearing, deaf to audible gold, and blind mental eyes to the form, shape, and to show the time subtly sculpted, a norm taken with added rhyme here by me for a clearing. Seeing sharpening means, and I'm soul renewed for the word. Bold as I only know, who the vernal have heard, stilled in the muted snow, dream of springtime presenting. Proserpine, reawake from woe, poem's series awaits, tears that the maelstrom froze, melt and grieving abates, hymn to the flaming rose, pour, with winter relenting, nightingales for their sky heart glows. We don't have nightingales here in upstate New York, but I put them in because I've translated so much from German versions, medieval Persian poetry, and always the poet is celebrating the nightingale's song to the rose, because that's the poet acknowledging his vision of God. Now, what did Philip write? Well, let's read not his translation. Let's read his original poem that he wrote in reply. I think that'll interest me more. Freudig tanzt es mein Herz, taumelnd im Jubel, ach, hört's doch Echos von fern, meisterlich grüßend und nie hätt's jemals geglaubt, dass ähnlich fühlende Geister sind, fern des grünenden Tals, nahe jedoch im Wind, der die Stimmen hierher stetig zu treiben weiß. Hör nur deutlich die Grüße, Freude spenden sie dir im Tal. Und sie locken hinaus ebenso freies Lied. Endlich spür ich die Kraft wieder im blut'gen Fluss meiner Adern und schöpfe selig machendes Gold draus. Und so blüht die Welt mitten im kalten Hauch aus dem silbrigen Glanz freudiger wieder auf. Heilig ist sie, die Größe, alles einende Göttin uns. I hope you liked that. I love to read in foreign languages. We have an exceptionally monoglot country, or have had until recently. I'm glad to see that with all our wonderful new citizens, we are acquiring more multilinguality. Let's go back to that and see what it meant, okay? That sounds good. Here's my translation of what Philip said. Happy dancing my heart, staggering hallelujah, hearing echoes afar, masterly greeting me. I'd have never believed it. Mine's enlivened as mine has been, far away from the vale greening, but near in wind. He is able to bring music athwart the waves. Hear my greeting and clearly, joy outreaching in valley wide, luring equally glad song to emerge once more. Ah, I'm feeling again strength in the heartbeat stream, vein conveyed and creating, verve engendered a healing gold. Now the world is abloom, maugre the winter's breath, out of silvery gleam rising my friend again. She is holy, we know it, all uniting the goddess great. Now the next form of another wait a minute. This actually could have been presented a little earlier, because this is not threes mixed with fours. This is another purely three-syllable meter. But it's easy enough to grasp. It's just 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6 and. Okay? Easy. In other words, an amphibrach was la la la. An Anapest was la la la. And now we get our third choice, la la la. Also, let me tell you what I am going to read from. It's a different book from the one I've been using. This is called The Eclogues of Virgil. And you can see once again, as with Philip, I learned from him and he learns from me. It's mutual mentorship. Here, it can't be exactly mutual because Virgil is an ancient Roman poet, the most prestigious poet in the Roman Empire, good friends with the Emperor Augustus and with all the gentry at court, but he can still be, his rhythms can still be imitated and made alive. So I interviewed him. I interviewed him by translating all 10 of his eclogues. They're his shorter collection of shorter poems, and then writing a reply, an eclogue of my own to each. So it's a real interview. We're really on equal terms, just as I was with Philip sharing our two languages. We were so intent on equality that I wrote an introduction and he wrote an introduction, and then we translated each other's introductions. So that bilingual book is maybe the only one you'll find, maybe not, but in any case, I think the one outstanding feature of it is that it has 4 introductions. Well, here we have the second eclogue of Virgil, which I'd like to read to you. And uncommonly among translators, I have chosen to keep the meter. Usually it's abandoned. I don't know why. I translated this not from Latin, but from the strictly accurate metrical version in German of Christian Nathanael Osiander. Osiander, Osiander, published in 1853, his wonderful version of the 10 eclogues. An eclogue is a short poem. These are bucolics, also, in other words, shepherd poems, or more strictly, poems of shepherd farmers. They talk a lot about crops, and a lot too about cows and goats. They're dairy farmers, even though Virgil wrote a separate book about farming, called Georgics, because George means farmer, teaching you how to run a farm. Now, what are the eclogues in form? Of course, they're dactylic, la la la, 6 of them. La la la, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6. That all the lines are like that. English poets almost always turn it into Iambic Pentameter or something equally inappropriate. Can you imagine 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 17 syllables rendered into and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5? I think that's a dreadful choice, but almost everybody has made it. I haven't been able to find the eclogues in any English version in 17-syllable lines, but this may be the first one. Anyway, I went to a German version because I know I can actually speak German and quite well, and Latin I cannot, so I'm much more confident. And I think he gave me wonderfully beautiful music to copy, very strictly analogous to that of the original, and with helpful footnotes too, which I used. Now, what are the eclogues in form besides their metrical form? They're one-act plays. Every one of them is a one-act play. Now, the one I'm going to read is not typical. The one-act plays require at least 2 speakers and sometimes 3. This is a monologue. It's very unusual from that point of view. But I wanted to do it because it dramatizes and illustrates with extreme beauty something that was not unusual in ancient Rome, that is, homosexual love and bisexual imagining. Virgil writes an equal number of love poems in his eclogues to women and to men. The important thing is to write your poems and to recite them and to play musical instruments like the syrinx, the panpipe that is, and the flute and the tabret, some kind of little bongo drum, and then the lyre or These are important accompaniments, and they're referred to endlessly. And how does an ancient Roman like to spend his time as in the country dwellers, shepherd farmers, as Virgil depicts them? The best way to spend a Saturday afternoon is to have it. Poetry, composition, and recitation competition. You write poems, and you write them back and forth to each other, like a sporting match. And what you've written, or seem to have improvised on the spot, it's hard to believe it, they're so perfect, but that's what Virgil seems to be conveying, that they compose on the spot and then they exchange their verses, because that's music. I have never seen a book conceived that way, as chiefly consisting of poetical competitions and recitals. So this poem is a monologue, but it's a very musical one, and it's typical of of one kind of love which was quite regular and accepted by everyone, and therefore it is, in fact, one of the most passionate homoerotic poems in the history of Western literature, and it's called just simply Second Eclogue, and it has one speaker named Corydon. And I should explain, too, he's in love with a man named Alexis, and that may surprise some people because that's often used as a girl's name now, probably because a celebrity actress on television made it popular. But for the previous 2,500 years, it was exclusively a man's name. Here we go. Corydon, shepherd, was burning for handsome Alexis, whom Master Iolus favoured. The outlook had Corydon badly disheartened. He to the beech grove resorted continually, where the tree-tops offered their shade, and where Corydon, constant though never rewarded, uttered to forest and hill an unvalued and wearisome chanting. Dreadful Alexis, can music no meaning convey to your spirit? Won't you a mercy exert? You will drive me at length to my deathbed. Cattle that look find a nourishing coolness emerge from the woodland. Hedges a thorn weapon to shelter accord to the verdant-backed lizard. Cumin and garlic strong flavoured, well crushed, to refreshments contribute, which to the workers will Festivus give when they're weary of mowing. I, though, who follow your steps in the evermore bright glaring sunlight, songs blend unheard with the crickets in thicket unchanging, abrasive. Were it not better to seek Amaryllis, the proud, the disdainful, sulking in scorn, or Menalcas to woo, though I have to admit it, dark the tanned hue of his face can't be likened to yours blinding whiteness. Though you're so charming, let not your attractive complexion betray you. Privets, though white, and the hyacinth darksomely coloured, both vanish. Why don't you ask who I am? Is the topic devoid of all interest? Great is my dairy farm wealth, an abundance of milk and of porridge, myriad lambs on Sicilian hills, and in summer, in winter, never a shortage of nutritive milk, re-infusing of vigor. As I was taught by the Dircean Amphion high on the mountain, Aricinth calling together the goats, even now I am singing. Nor am I ugly. When down at the seashore I looked in the water, handsome the figure I glimpsed, while the winds were caressing the wavelets. E'en to be likened to Daphnis I'd fear not, but trust to your judgment. Oh, how I'd like it if you, tranquil days on the mead not despising, lived in a plain simple cottage with me. Of the deer we'd be hunters, or mid the green of the mallows be driving the goats with their young ones. If the duet we attempted, we'd emulate Pan in the forest. He, you'll recall, was the first who with wax joined the reeds to be tuneful. Sheep he would ever protect, and was equally kind to the shepherds. Don't be annoyed if your lips should be chafed while you're playing the reed pipe. Think of the diligence proved by Amyntas, great flute skill attaining. I have a syrinx with reeds of the hemlock in pitches that differ, 7 in all, that Demetus had given me once for a present. Later, when dying, he said, "You have mastered it. Now you will own it." That's how Demetus had felt, but Amyntas begrudged it with envy. I just want to stop there. You notice we've had a whole page of technical discussions about music. You can tell what these guys like. Look, I've 2 fawns that I caught in a perilous narrow ravine shaft. Fur spotted whitely all over. 2 lambkins that suckle twice daily. All will be yours if you wish, although Thestilis wanted to have them. Well, she may get them at last, if you steadily spurn my affections. Come over here, you so good-looking boy, for the nymphs are presenting lilies the best. In a basket abundant comes white-robed the naiad. Naiads are sea nymphs, but here, actually, it's a servant girl. I think most of them were actually slaves. Tops of the poppy she plucked, with the violets pale right beside them. Blooms of the dill, with their dulcet aroma, are daffodil comrades. Fennel, beloved of bees, ever fragrant, and other sweet herbage. Iris and cassia, too, golden-flowered, the girl is enwreathing. Dusky-toned quinces, with downy soft plum, I myself want to gather. Also the chestnuts that dear Amaryllis, adorable maiden, loved, and the plums smooth as wax. We must honor the fruits. Let us love them. Laurel, you too I've picked out, and you too, Myrtle, friendly together. Made for each other, you raise a most lovable, drunk-making fragrance. The laurel was sacred to Apollo, and the myrtle to Venus. Corydon. Oh, I better take a little break here, because we're going to need a sudden change, a very dramatic one, of mood. Corydon. Awkward. You boor! You will never with gifts tempt Alexis. Even if presents availed, you could have to compete with Iollas. Aye, woe is me, and alas, I'm defeated. I better admit it. Blooms to the south wind I gave, to the wild boars my shimmering water. Whom are you running from? Fool, in the grove have the gods made their dwelling. Paris Dardanian, too. Then let Pallas, the builder of cities, that's Pallas Athena, the goddess of wisdom, live in a tower she made. May the grove be my choice and my freedom. She-lion harries the wolf, and the latter is after the she-goat. Filled with new vigor, the goat would devour the rich flowering broom plant. Corydon follows Alexis. All creatures are fervid and harried. Look at the hard-driven oxen, the wearisome plough bearing homeward. See how the sun, when descending, the length of a shadow will double. Me, love alone, set aglow, hotly kindled, who now may control it? Corydon, Corydon, you've been grabbed by a violent madness. Only half pruned on the elm are the vines in their arduous climbing. Why not start weaving a basket of pliable wands of the willow? Twigs of a hardier wood you can add for a practical crafting. What's a rejection? Remember, there's many another Alexis. Virgil, you're also prophetic of Britain's great bard, William Shakespeare, brave swan of Mantua, kin of the swan of our Stratford-on-Avon. Him I had interviewed earlier. Here, as to you I am turning, let me observe that you both have depicted what never will alter. Multiple gardens and battlefronts prodigal nature provided. Crucial as part of the humanist training Erasmus had patterned during the youth time of William, the famous Virgilian Eclogues being, composed by the poet most highly esteemed of the Romans, widely were studied and relished when read in the splendor of Latin. We know for a fact that Shakespeare learned in wherever he learned it, probably Stratford High, to read Latin. He actually bases a poem on the Fasti, which is festival poems by Ovid, which had not been translated in his time. So Virgil is easily accessible to Shakespeare, and what I don't see here is my Shakespeare set of interviews, which I call Shakespeare. You can find them easily on Amazon, and maybe you might even buy them because they're lots of fun. He wrote 154 poems about his love life, and I answer every one of them on facing pages. So it's like a TV series. There are two love triangles. One is male, male, female, and the other is three males. And he gets caught up in both of them, and the conflicts between the two and the problems involved in each are never solved, and the thing ends in the middle of nowhere in Sonnet 154, meaning it could have gone on and on. It's really so much like a diary of William Shakespeare, because he calls the narrator calls himself Will and makes endless jokes about Will as a name and as a thing in his psychology. Yes, but here's the tie-in with Virgil. In Sonnet 20, I'm glad I remembered the exact number. You can look it up immediately if you wish. In Sonnet 20, the narrator of Shakespeare explains to his boyfriend, he says that you were originally designed to be a woman, and nature had created you the most beautiful woman that could well be pictured, except she got sleepy or absent-minded. She doted, in Wordsworth's, or rather in Shakespeare's words, doted, and she put on an extra organ, thereby making you male instead. But that's just fine. The women will have fun with you, and so will I. And what's more, you are hereby dubbed my master mistress. Does that to show you a bisexual imagination of the Virgilian sort? I think it's incontestable that it does. So that ends our Virgil Shakespeare unit, but it doesn't have to conclude our dactyl presentation, because, just a second, oh yes, here we are, Nature Preserve. I wrote a poem about the Binghamton University campus nature preserve. It's a marvelous place, and I got to understand it much better by going on a tour, a group tour offered by Professor Julian Shepard, who's a friend of mine and an excellent cellist with whom I've often played music. I'm a violinist myself. And he offered this tour, and he showed us around. He showed us the two most interesting and astonishing things were a porcupine at the top of a tree. The very top, you wondered how he kept his balance. The porcupine is a large animal. And I was further told that if a porcupine should meet up with a dog, the veterinarian is going to have some real problems to deal with. So there's your porcupine, and then I learned about the beavers that have totally reshaped the place. They redetermined where the directions in which the water courses would go, and they redetermined also the way the trees would be grouped. So the beavers had a big role, but basically they're just coming back because there were lots of beavers in upstate New York until in the late 19th century the fad for beaver hats almost drove them to extinction. So this is a nice place, the Nature Preserve, to demonstrate the laws of evolution. But here in this poem, I use a different kind of dactylic hexameter. It's still 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6 and in line 1, but then line 2, 1 and a 2 and a 3, 4 and a 5 and a 6. couple of syllables absent in the middle and another one absent at the end. But it lets you breathe between the lines, and in the middle of the second line, it alters the rhythm in a very interesting and catchy way, which makes it is very chatty and suitable for conversation. This is called the Ovidian District. A distic just means a two-liner. That's why I gave you an example of a two-liner. A distic is a couplet. A couplet is a two-liner. We have lots of synonyms for everything in English because English is made up of so many different languages. So once again, the meter: 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6 and 1 and a 2 and a 3, 4 and a 5 and a 6. And now I will sing the Nature Preserve. Heavy and brownish and slothful and monkey-like, sparkling with quill frost, high on a hemlock's bare branch, piercing midwinter's pure blue. Napping, the porcupine wakes. You can watch how he's groping and stretching. Want to predict what he'll think? Glance at the damage below. Look at the sugar pine, punched full of holes, half demolished, a ravage. That's because year after year, pileate woodpeckers banged, jolted, concussed the hard husk, having hoped for a beetle grub feast day. Standing in snow-covered marsh, only one willow remains. All the less lucky were felled by the beavers that, hapless at walking, like to have dinner at home, bringing the wood to the wet. Now, though, a dam they created when all the doomed others went under, weakening, coming apart, letting new water pour through. Makes a fresh forest arise. Came the aspens, impatient invaders, then the intrepid white pines, branches low spreading out wide. Seeing familiar destroyers revisit, the beaver included, banished a century back, harried by fashion-mad hats, caught in the maundering muddle of wondering where we are going, grateful we come to a stop, stirred by the rule of return. Okay, now we've done the Dactylic Hexameter and the Ovidian District with the pause in the second line. And now we did the Third Asclepiatic. It's time now to sample the fourth. 1 and 2 and a 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and a 3, 4 and a 5 and 6. 1 and 2 and a 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and a 3, 4 and a 5 and 6. I don't know anybody in the world today who is writing in any more complicated form than that. You have to do that every stanza. It takes an immense amount of craft. Although once you get into it, you're carried away by the rhythm, and like everything else that I'm presenting today, it becomes one of the joys of poetic meter. Here's a fourth Asclepiatic. I chose to do this in the more original format, not hybridized with rhyme, but in the Roman way with no rhymes whatever. It's called You of Life Can a Bible Write. You of life can a Bible write, gospel tale with a plot, letters on what you've learned, book of Acts for your travel notes, then apocalypse dream, telling of what's to come. You of life can a temple build, big cathedral inspired, dwarfing the hordes that crowd, rosy pane where a smiling lass, now remembered for A, gave you a courage word. For A-Y-E means forever, and that's the way it's supposed to be pronounced. And I'm picturing if you do a temple of your life, you may well wish to have a girlfriend in a stained glass window. I would like that. You of life, an orchestral world, two can form where the four symphony sections blend, themes recalling of which a hint given first will expand, filling the hall with light. You of life may a mural paint, showing how the divine flame could in upburst rise, learn in circle to whirl round one who the lesson had told. Those that behold will shine. I put the one in with a capital O. That could be God, that could be the sun. I'd like to read one more fourth Asclepiatic. That was an ambitious one, telling you 4 different kinds of art you could make out of your life. This time I want to meditate a bit, or contemplate rather, the in the Fourth Asclepiatic, the second one I'll do, which I call Holy Mage of the Healing Arts. I want to think about the man or the god Asclepius, or Aesculapius in Roman. Asclepius was apparently an excellent healer who was deified after his death so he's in the pantheon of the gods now. And there are spas run in honor of and sponsored by god Asclepius in Greece and in Turkey. I went to one in each country because Turkey, of course, was also colonized by the Romans, and they brought over the Greek concepts of meter with them. So both in Greece and in Turkey, they have Asclepiatic spas. You go and the priests chant, and while they musically chant, you've been given some kind of a what should we say, sedative, which puts you to sleep, and when you sleep, it's probably simply wine that you were given, you may dream, and the god may appear to you and tell you the remedy for your ailment. Another treatment was handling snakes. That was thought to be, I'm not quite sure why that was regarded as so salutary. It may have something to do with the fact that the snakes shed their skin every year, and therefore are wonderful symbols of immortality, and had been used that way for centuries. So snake charming, and then the dream, and yes, there is actually milkweed today has a name that relates to Asclepius because of its healing properties. Anything else? Oh, yes. Most interesting to the tourist is the votive objects, because if Asclepius at the spa, through his dream delegate, or perhaps one of the priests for consultation, if they cured you, you could. This was the typical way to express thanks and to pay tribute. You make a votive emblem, that is to say, simply a clay model, or perhaps in marble or in metal, of your cured organ. This could be any organ of the body at all, and then you could put it with some adhesive on a wood background or metal background, and you could send it as a plaque or simply as a votive token on its own. Very, very interesting. Here's how I wrote that up. Holy Mage of the Healing Arts, scalpel skilled are you called, clearly a man of parts. Milkweed good for a fever pain, patients even today praise when relief they gain. Root for pleurisy cooled the lung, cure Asclepius all name in Linnaeus tongue. Or Linnaeus, if you like. You're a famed constellation made. Stars have granted a shape, stature that cannot fade. Serpent bearer, with snake rod meant, pleasantly to recall snakes in the temple pent, calming, healthily sliding on over suppurant skin, lovely as gliding swan. Snake touch, tranquil massage, milkweed and poetry, these are means that combine and well in the mind for me. Well, we're getting to the end of our Asclepiatic poem. He really must have been loved. So many poems in honor of him. We've done the Third Asclepiatic, and now we've done a couple of samples of the Fourth. I will give you an example now, lastly, of the Fifth Asclepiatic. That I don't have to read a long chart for, although I could. Here's the way the Fifth Asclepiatic goes. 1 and 2 and a 3. 4 and a 5, 6 and a 7 and 8. 1 and 2 and a 3, 4 and a 5, 6 and a 7 and 8. 1 and 2 and a 3, 4 and a 5, 6 and a 7 and 8. 1 and 2 and a 3, 4 and a 5, 6 and a 7 and 8. Lovely. Now Horace, the most famous lyricist of ancient Greeks, ancient Roman poets, Virgil, of whom I read an Eclogue, is the most famous epic poet for his Aeneid, which combines traits of the Odyssey and Iliad of Homer. Horace wrote one of the, you might say, almost nearly most famous poems of the world, because it has a phrase that everybody seems to know, but nobody knows where it comes from, or at least unless they've studied a little bit of Horace. Seize the day, you've heard that? Carpe diem comes from this poem. That's one reason why I chose it. I want you to get acquainted with this wonderful verse. It deserves to be known all over the world just the way carpe diem, seize the day, grab the moment, live your life, is. Please don't ask, 'tis a thing wretched to know, either for me or you, what the gods may intend. Leuconoe. Even in Babylon, calculation will fail. Simply endure. The Babylonians were renowned astronomers. Simply endure, patient what's handed out, whether winters get worse, or if the last Jupiter picked for us, waves that rage even yet, weakening rocks deep in Tyrrhenian sea, proved enough. Be prepared, straining your wines, hope in our span so brief, cutting short, while our life, jealous of time, races to no avail. Seize the day, make it yours, then be content, future you cannot trust. Well, I had one of the many times of my life doing an interview reply to that. Ode 11, Book 1, Horace you hear, chanted in New York speech. Fifth Asclepiad he, using it well, calmly commends to us, rhythm leaping about, yet with a firm beat for a solid base, more athletic and more acrobat skill asking than modern style. Seize the day is a thought, perfectly phrased, never abandon that. All is number may come quickly to mind, too, from the olden world. This Pythagoras tone, sounding again, chimes with Horatian tune. Meter, number, and beat, giving me strength, love, and a length of days. I quoted another famous quote from ancient times, number is all. Pythagoras founded a regular religious cult of mathematics based on that. And for me, numbers, in the English language, we have some wonderful things in our language. English has been used to use the word numbers to refer to poetry. It was said of a poet in one of Samuel Johnson's Lives of the Poets that he lisped in numbers. That is to say, he was making sounds in metrical form even before he had learned words. So what do we have next? Oh yes, the Alcaic. Alcaic. Let me say a word about the Alcaic. It's a short form. It's easily learned. And it's one of the very most dramatic forms you can ever encounter in verse. I know some people are going to say, well, what about hip-hop? I think this beats it. You decide for yourself. Here's the beat. And 1 and 2 and 3 and a 4 and 5. And 1 and 2 and 3 and a 4 and 5. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and a 2 and a 3 and 4 and... Algebra, I should explain, the meaning of the word algebra is the kind of poetry, the kind of math that Algebra does. In other words, algebra is named after Algebra, the Arabian mathematician, and it's him that I'm writing about. This is a very famous anecdote about him, where he's sitting writing, doing math in front of his house, and a herd of camels goes by, and he never sees it or hears it. Algebra wrote in front of his home one day that in a little town by the desert lay. Then past him ran 100 camels, thundering hoofs, no restriction trammels. A rancher then arriving inquired, Did you by any chance a herd of my camels view? I noticed nothing, came the answer. Loving your labor's a task enhancer. The rancher wild replied, Yet I see the dust has covered you. The animals ran, I trust. Algebra looks. He can't deny it. Algebra dwells in a realm of quiet. Here's another thing. This is an amazing poem, and not the poem itself so much, you judge that, but the story that it tells. My friend told me this. His name is Shahid Alam. He, as a German citizen, he's lived for 40 years in Germany, but his childhood and adolescence were spent in Pakistan. And he did calligraphies, which I think I showed in session 1. What Shahid Alam did, among many other things, it means witness of the world, witness of the world. It's a name he gave himself, and he has used ever since, because his original name seemed to be a little bit hard for the German emigration official to pronounce. In any case, he was hired as a laughter counselor. Did you know there are such things as laughter camps? You go to such a camp and you get therapy, which will bring back, if you had it once and lost it, the skill to laugh. It's so healthy to laugh. All the clinicians agree, but some people can't do it. Why not give them some help? My friend was paid a fee to contribute help to people who'd enrolled in a lecture course where those who'd long forgotten laughter practiced reviving the skill. It's healthy. The pupils faced each other among the trees and gave each thought a laughter-promoting theme. Encouraged in a woodland setting, thus to anticipate joys long hidden. The oddest thing, my friend would discover soon, appeared when people, trying their best to laugh, brought forth instead an ardent weeping. Molten emotions had won their freedom. You know, it occurs to me that laughing and weeping are very closely related. If you laugh too much, you start to cry. If you cry too much, you may start to laugh. William Blake pointed that out in his Proverbs of Hell, part of his book, a manifesto poem or prose poem or whatever it is, called The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. I used to teach courses in Blake. I taught for 35 years, and I don't think I ever actually had a year without a course where Blake was included. William Blake, the great artist and poet, is one of my old-time favorites. I'll do you one more alchaic poem. This is about Henry VIII. I'm not going to talk about his politics or his role as the founder of the Church of England, nor will I talk about beheadings and divorces of wives. I'd like to focus instead on a CD I got of his collected musical compositions. He could have had a fine career in that sphere alone if he had left the others. Works 32 had Henry VIII composed, melodious toned, that might by his life be glozed, that is, glossed or interpreted. In faith that merit love obtaineth, fate he bewails when the maid disdaineth. He'll many tunes devote to the claim of youth, to have its will in honour and cordial truth. If head and heart conflict, says Harry, pray to the Lord when you're forced to tarry. Strong lyric impulse here. When the solo sings, an obligato part will adorn the king's. She's ivy-like, in love entwining, flexible gesture, his own divining. This cortegiano, master of courtly love, says youth will rule, though bowing to powers above. A church he founded, morals foundered, music had flowered if royals floundered. You see why I can't stay away from rhyme. It's just too much fun. And now, I'd like to do the Sapphic. I have Sapphics in a couple of books. Back in this bilingual one with Philip, I wrote a light interlude, I call it. And I think it's good to introduce the Sapphic this way because it's very often thought of as a relaxing kind of poetry. It was reportedly invented by Sappho, the oldest woman poet, I think, of whom we have knowledge. In the Bible, Miriam, after the crossing of the Red Sea, led the escaping Jews in a hymn of triumph, which is an excellent poem, metered like the Psalms, which I'll be mentioning very shortly. But there's no indication that she composed it herself. She danced to it, she played the tambourine, and she sang it. But until it can be shown that she wrote it too, the oldest, historically oldest woman poet of whom we have knowledge is Sappho. Sappho wrote vast amounts, but almost barely a pamphlet's worth. 20-some poems, including fragments, survive. But although Plato is said to have pronounced that she was worthy of being called the 10th muse, that is, just like the 9 goddesses who inspire the arts. I like to honor her. And she wrote a form that is very pleasant to write. I already pointed out that it can be quite relaxing. It goes like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and a 4 and 5 and 1 and 2 and 3 and a 4 and 5 and 1 and 2 and 3 and a 4 and 5 and 1 and a 2 and. Virgil, Milton, Spenser, the epic poets, liked to rest in pastoral, aromatic meadows of the mind. So tonight I'll offer sapphic relaxing. Cats in Minneapolis, I remember. Otis, white-trimmed orange and highly social. Nick is black and gradual, slow in movement, quiet, a loner. Days and nights are chilly in Minnesota. That's where my daughter lives, and I'm talking about her cats. Nick is lying, touching the much-loved heater. Otis roaming, letting himself be petted, friendly and questing. Seems we little change in our basic nature. Daimon, chance, necessity, love, and hoping. Goethe, in his Urworte Orphisch lyric, saw them in combat. Yet I note the errors I used to make in youth I hardly conquer. The hope is only that what lights that God in their favour planted flourish and ripen. Here's another one. I melodic memories lauding nightly, heard of brave command in the present moment, faith restore, and know in the form you're granted, Sappho reviving. Love a surgent, kin to the ocean surf wave, rushing, pouring whir in a world susurral. Heart and want have mustering told me, hark to dark ere the daybreak. Patient while I wait for the hymn's arrival. Aid I've long besought for the blood translation, so to feel the tone of the Carmen ardor, loud in the flowing. Me in vein and artery, living ocean, let the tidal winds of the ancient rhythm rouse to hear the roar of the inward streaming, shouting, resounding. Me in vein and artery, living ocean. That means I have a blood circulation system, which is the ocean inside me. Let the tidal winds of the ancient rhythm rouse. Let the sound of this be increased by winds that you can still hear, and which, being tidal, make you think of the ocean. How do you do that? Raise a shell to your ear. Some people will tell you, almost universally I think it is true that people will tell you, your elders, so to speak, that if you put a shell to your ear, you'll hear the sound of the ocean. The science called physics tells you that is quite wrong. But what you do learn from physics is even better. You learn that you are hearing, vastly amplified in the echo chamber of the shell, the flowing of the blood in your own ear. Now, Sappho is also famous for another poem style, meter, called the Greater Sapphic. It's not greater in the sense of deeper or better. It just, the lines are longer and the poems tend to be bigger. I wrote one in favor, once again, of a cat. This time it wasn't the two cats, Otis and Nick, Orange, White, and Tuxedo Cat, that I talked about before. This time I'm talking about the neighbor's cat, named Ella, who's brindled. Have you ever seen a brindled cat? Black, orange, and white, all mixed together. No patches, they're all mixed. It's like an impressionist painting. It's an extraordinary thing to see. Glorious cat, you're brindled, blending tones that reddish and black shade into brown and tannish, white as an added feature, lower face and neck and the paws, all of the fur tone brightens. Portrait and landscape melded, tints that forest floor will adorn, hinting of winter's snowfall, trace in the early springtime, yet with hues of earth and the leaves, warmer the days emerging. Part of your head is hidden. Autumn umber pillow is put right where your chosen colors, wondrous in rich abundance, with the fabrics sing, and the twain harmony sweet engender. Sideways and back reclining, you a deep contentment enjoy, lying on black blanket gentle, cleverly well supported, known by all who see you as one, given a peaceful wisdom. Fun to read the Greater Sapphic. Okay, well, I'd like to show you another meter. This is also ancient. I didn't know it was by Horace. I didn't know it was used by Horace until I interviewed Horace, and for my interview project came upon this meter. The place where I first encountered it is in another interview book that I wrote called Poems of Wine and Tavern Romance, a dialogue with the Persian poet Hafiz. Hafiz lived in the Middle Ages, and he wrote about wine and tavern romance. And he often... Oh, this is a beautiful cover. I want to show it to you again, maybe close up. Can you see the Turkish tulip? I think you can see it. When Hafiz talks about roses and narcissus, or it's a daffodil-like flower, and the tulip, he is talking about his three favorites, and the tulip he mentions is to be understood as the Turkish tulip. Turkish tulips are not like the ones we grow in America, for the most part. They have three, or often usually depicted with three, maybe more, I'm not sure, very delicate, long, and quite elongated petals. And in this tile here, you can perhaps see... That's it. You've got it. The tulip and the name of God. Okay. Now, these I translated from a German poet named Joseph von Hammer, or in German, Joseph von Hammer. He had a different kind of translation philosophy from anyone else I've noted. He was a meter virtuoso. He knew more meters than anybody, and he invented an equal number on his own. And he just simply went through Hafiz and translated everything in meters that he felt like it in any given case. And for this poem, he decided to use a meter from Horace. I can't even remember the name of it. It's quite a rare one. Goes like this: 1 and a 2, 3 and a 4, 5 and a 6, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and... I was praising the Alcaic because of that final outburst in every stanza. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and 4. Maybe this is an even what should we say, a more enlivened meter. I'm always looking for very lively meters. Okay. Poems of Wine and Tavern Romance. That's what we're going to get. Place that is safe, wine that is pure, friend that is true, and these the three that you've been granted, fate delightful. Truths of the world, deeds of the world, all are in vain. 1,000 times have I confirmed that rule of merit. Quickly defined, safety at last, limited time for robbers lurking in the rear guard lie awaiting. Sad and alas, up till today, never I'd known the one I chose for guide would lead to lucky fortune. Over the cup, rubious wine, penance to do, is merely phantom thought. The reason won't support it. Chin dimple fine, this will contain lovable charm no rich and myriad wisdom ever can encompass. Where is my heart? Leading me wise onto the path. My friend I never could succeed astray in finding. Slender the waist, wonder to see, even if I may no embrace attain, the mind will take its pleasure. Ruby recall, mentioned before, why be surprised? The eye an ardent pyrope for a ring will offer, smiling the mouth. Truly I'm yours, never a doubt. Oh, Hafiz, like a little boy, he'll fool and lead you. I thought it was a woman with her slender waist, but men in Hafiz, he usually addresses men, though I have to say his few poems, clearly intended to be heard by a woman, are among his finest. So once again, with Shakespeare, with Virgil, and with Hafiz, we have a bisexual imagination. Here also, there's a bit of an oddity. He says that if you look at his eye, you'll find a ruby or a pyrope. Pyrope is just another name for a red stone. That refers to the medieval Islamic belief that, or just say Persian belief, that the heart is so full when you're in love that some of the blood comes up and reddens the eyes. I should say something about this. You might think something should have been said right at the start. How can you be a medieval Persian, Islamic, that is to say, pub poet, and praise wine all day and write poems of wine and tavern romance? The answer is he's a Sufi, and they are semi-independent in the sense that they wish to transcend all the traditions, and they have a difference of opinion on wine. For that matter, whether wine is forbidden or not is something which, although the majority opinion is that, or at least the Sunni opinion is that it is not permitted. In the Shia tradition, as I understand it, there more stress is put on those verses where in the Quran wine seems to be not entirely forbidden, but only recommended to be drunk in moderation. Also, we should keep in mind that in the Eden of the righteous there are 4 streams, just as in the Bible, except here the streams have different content. There's water, milk, honey, and wine. If that's supposed to appeal to you when you think of it as possibly a prelude, allegorical or not, of what you will find in heaven, how would you get any joy out of imagining Eden wine unless you'd had some down here? So there are grounds for dispute, and these grounds have been used for dispute. And that's how it happened that you have a medieval Persian pub poet. Now, I like that meter a lot, so for my final ancient Greek number, or Greco-Roman metric demonstration in an interview fashion when I write replies, here's what I have to offer. Tune up the flute, string up the harp, strike up the band, and grab your partner by the hand, and next encircle gently her waist, whirl her about, then to embrace will, after all the dancing, be the pretty sequel. Never before, travelling bard, seeking delight, have you, the motley minstrel, rhapsodizing wildly, dared to perform, free of constraint, willing as wind, a more entrancing folk dance over plain and meadow. Follow the sun, tracing the brook, fording the stream, and bring a picnic lunch and spread it on the green sward. Louder the heart, warmer the blood, higher the mind, we follow Hafiz to the promised land of pleasure. Now, for a final offering, I would like to suggest something that is deeply rooted in my own experience. When I was a boy, I lived in a small town, and there wasn't a synagogue, and I was being raised Jewish, and my father wanted to have services at home, and he wanted them to be conducted in Hebrew, so he hired a graduate student from Indiana University to tutor me in Hebrew, and after I had learned enough, he thought, after 2 or 3 years, he asked me to read the Friday evening service every Friday night. I did that for about 10 years, and it's all in Hebrew, and it is almost all consisting of Psalms of David, and I became curious about the meter. You well might be puzzled by it. Let us try a sample psalm here. This is number 92. A psalm, a song for the Sabbath day. It is a good thing to give thanks unto the Lord, and to sing praises unto thy name, O Most High, to declare thy loving kindness in the morning, and thy faithfulness in the night seasons, with an instrument of 10 strings, and the psaltery, with a solemn sound upon the harp. For thou, O Lord, hast made me glad through thy work. I will exult in the works of thy hands. How great are thy works, O Lord! Thy thoughts are very deep. I want to skip to my favorites at the end. The righteous shall grow like the palm tree. He shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of the Lord, they shall flourish in the courts of our God. They shall still bring forth fruit in old age. They shall be full of sap and richness, to declare that the Lord is upright, my rock in whom there is no flaw. I think you get hints at a meter. I'm not sure that whether any meter was intended, because it is really quite loose. For example, if you say, to declare thy loving kindness in the morning and thy faithfulness in the night seasons. It's possible, but it did give me the idea of meter. For one thing is very clear. Every verse has 2 parts in roughly the same length, similar lengths, and the second part of the psalm usually says the same thing as the first one. You could call the structure A prime, to declare thy loving kindness in the morning, and thy faithfulness in the night seasons. For thou, O Lord, hast made me glad through thy work. I will exult in the works of thy hands. You see, it's A followed by A prime. Now, what could possibly be the meter? I wondered if there was one. When I recited it on the Friday night, I tried, as I did for you, to give a sense always of the 2 parts of the verse, and even some heavy beats where I thought they most likely would be in the original. But in English, you cannot tell, because it never is the goal of the, or it rarely is the goal of the translator to keep the meter, although there may be exceptions. So I waited until, as it happens, I didn't think there were no Wikipedias in those days and computers. So I waited until I started teaching at Binghamton University. The man across the hall from me was a Judaic Studies professor, and I asked him, "What is the meter of the Psalms?" And he said, "Well, the 2-part line has usually, let's say, 3 beats. Or 4, and so you can start with a 3 and a 4 and a 3, a 3 and a 3, or a 4 and a 4. They'll all be options. Or there's another system. You could do it with 3s and 2s. 3 and a 3, 2 and a 2, 3 and a 2, 2 and a 3. And that's the meter of the Psalms. You want to hear? Just a little. I think it'll be fun to read. I really enjoy them. Mizmor shir leyom HaShabbat. טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון, להגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות, עלי עשור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון וכינור, כי שמחתני אדוני בפועלך, במעשה ידיך רנן, מה גדלו מעשיך אדוני, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך, איש בר לא ידע, וכסיל לא יבין את זאת. בפרוח רשעים כמו עשב, ויציצו כל פועלי אבן, לשמדם עדי עד. That That's unusual in being a three-part verse. I don't know if maybe there used to be another section there that was lost. I'm not sure. There are other questions that arise. Lehishamdam is an odd. You wonder if that is vocalized correctly. Lahashmidam would make more sense to me. V'ata marom leolam Adonai, ki hine oivech Adonai. כי הנה יאיביך יאבדו, יתפרדו כל פועלי אבן. ותרם קרם קרני, בלותי בשמן רענן. ותבט עיני בשורי, בקמים עלי רעים תשמענה אוזני. צדיק כתמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון ישגב. שתולים בבית אדוני, בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו. עוד ינובון בשיבה, דשנים ורעננים יהיו. להגיד כי ישר אדוני, צורי ולא עוולתה בו. And that's where I think I'll conclude today. I really hope you've gotten the sense of what has become perhaps my favorite sensation to think of these days when I wake up in the morning, and that is the joy of poetic meter.